Caroline Dowd-Higgins. Thank you for listening to Your Working Life, my podcast series featuring thought leaders in the career and personal growth arena. Now, I know that you spend a significant portion of your life at work, so I'm on a mission to provide you with tools, inspiration, and resources so you can enjoy your career and love your life. And I'm delighted to welcome my very special guest to the show. Tom Gimbel is with me today. Tom, welcome.
Glad to be with you, Caroline.
Hey, Tom, I want to tell our listening audience about you, and then we're going to dive into a juicy conversation. Tom Gimbel is the founder and CEO of LaSalle Network, a staffing and recruiting firm headquartered in Chicago. And Tom is a national expert on jobs, labor market trends, hiring, employee engagement, and workplace culture. He is a contributor for Entrepreneur, Inc. and Fortune magazines. He speaks at conferences and universities across the country and is featured frequently on CNBC, Today, Fox and Friends, Fox Business Network, The Wall Street Journal, Fast Company, Staffing Success Magazine, and Crane Chicago Business, amongst many others. So, Tom, welcome to the show, and let's get started with the beginning story of how did you start LaSalle Network?
So I was in the unlike it seems like what's happened over the past 15 years or so is a lot of people start businesses where they haven't worked. I'm a little old-fashioned and like to do things I already know I can accomplish. And so I had been in the staffing and recruiting business for about 2 years before I started LaSalle. So I had with a gentleman I'd gone to college with. He had a startup company, and I joined them about 8 months or 9 months into it. And after doing that, we had some really phenomenal success and growth. And then as they were in the process of getting ready to sell that company, rather than go and work for somebody else, the late 90s were an interesting time for any of us that are old enough to remember that. Mm-hmm. And I took advantage of that situation, and funding was fairly accessible at that point in time. And I opened my own shop, and knock on wood, $50 million in revenue later and 150 employees and countless states and clients and candidates helped. It's been a nice run for us.
Well done. And you're working hard and you're helping other people work hard. So good stuff. So let's talk a little bit, though, about successfully starting and growing your own company, because it is not easy to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah, my belief is that you have to love it. You have to, well, let me rephrase. I hate it when people use mandatory words. You don't have to. I believe that in order to find happiness and success, you have to love it. You can find one or the other if you don't, but to truly find happiness in what you're doing is really important to love what you're doing and to go at it, because I believe it should be something that is your number one priority. Yeah. And if you're going to take something and be responsible for the lives of others as you hire them on, make decisions that determine whether people have income or don't, take deliverables for a client or a prospect or a customer, and say you're going to do something, those are important things. And while there's plenty of people that don't deliver on their word, if you're going to open up a business and you are going to be the definition of an entrepreneur, then I think you have to work at it a lot in order to be successful and to become an expert in that space. And when I started my company, I was working, still am to a large extent, but 75, 80 hours a week, working 6 or 7 days a week, going to work when it was dark, coming home when it was dark. But I loved it. I loved every minute of it. And there wasn't one moment that I thought, I wish I were doing something else.
And I'm with you. I agree. I don't think work-life balance exists. I think there's work-life integration when we can make that happen. But with entrepreneurs, there's a different reality in that, we've got to make it happen. And I was going to say you've got to make hay when the sun shines, but the truth is we work vampire hours too, and that's just the reality of our world as entrepreneurs.
I think there's a lot to that. And, it's almost like when people say work-life balance, I always think about the scales of justice and how it's blindfolded and they're uneven. And
that's brilliant.
The exact same thing with work-life balance is that's terrific if you don't want to be a huge success in either one.
Yeah, well done.
And you have to manage accordingly for where things are. And what I tell people when I hire people is I want your career to be like a child. And I have 3 kids, so I speak from experience, is that none of them are my favorite. However, there's certain times that I have to favor each one in certain situations. I can't be at 3 baseball games at the same time. I
Yeah.
can't be at 3 school plays at the same time. And you have to pick. And I say, make your career like a child. It's not going to win out every time over your personal life, but it has to, on multiple occasions, be the one that gets favored.
Yeah, nice. Nicely done. So let's dig a little deeper into LaSalle Network. You've got some great career development wisdom that we're going to share soon, but I want to know about your company because we've got clients out there, not only employers, but candidates, and you're working with both. So tell me more.
So we've got a bunch of different verticals. Rather than get into industry verticals, because we're in the recruiting business, we have to take people from some companies and put them someplace else.
Yeah.
We don't be too focused in one vertical, but we more on skill sets of the candidates. So we do accounting and financial, technology, human resources, marketing, operations, administrative and office support, and then call centers.
Got
And
it.
so we're placing people in those roles. We don't place people in accounting firms necessarily doing accounting work, but we place people who have accounting backgrounds and accounting experience in jobs in any company doing accounting work, and same for our other skill sets. And we do it both on a search basis of permanent placement as well as temporary and or contract labor.
Now, is the person listening in the audience who says, "Hey, I've got that skill set," do they contact you or do you find them by virtue of their good work, or
There's
both?
both. So on the staffing side, which is temporary and contract staffing, you're placing people who aren't currently employed by a corporation. So those folks we go out and find, and they come to us. On the search side, it's the same thing. We've been fortunate enough over the 17 years since I started the company to have created a very nice brand in the marketplace, both in the Midwest and Chicago and also nationally as we've expanded over the past couple of years. So we do have people that come to us, but we're also sourcing candidates, meaning good old-fashioned headhunting and calling
Yeah.
into companies every single day to find people. I think when you get too reliant on one way or the other, you're missing out on some very talented individuals.
I agree. It's essential to be nimble. So
Yep.
let's go back and think about your expertise and career wisdom from the viewpoint of the recruiter. Tell me why it's important to create professional and personal relationships with clients.
Well, my belief, it's important for recruiters in our industry and salespeople in our industry, but it is in every industry, is that we have a very low cost threshold, meaning that even for an executive search placement, if you're placing somebody who's a $400,000 a year person, your fee on that's going to be $120,000. Well, that pales in comparisons to what a lot of big corporations are spending on everyday expenditures, right?
Hmm.
So, which is repetitive, but it's so you got to realize that that means that a company will look at different people without a big sales pitch all the time to do what we do. So relationships are really important and staying top of mind is. And when you have something that isn't very capital intensive, anybody can go work out of their basement and be a recruiter. They just have to have the wherewithal on how they present themselves, where they get the candidates, how quickly they can deliver. And what you have with a bigger company like ours is you have scale. And if you have size and scalability with the also the ability to be nimble, then that's where we have a really unique niche, where we have the resources of a huge national or global firm financially, and we're as quick and fast as a small firm with the resources of a really strong mid-market large company. And to build those relationships with people is they know that when their career, when their reputation is on the line and they need to get people working for them to get their work done, they can count on us. And you build that up over time. And the key to that, Caroline, which you know better than anybody, is retention of your staff.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because you can't have a relationship if you're in a different place all the time. I mean, we always use their dating analogies are huge in recruiting, right? It's very hard to have a relationship in Chicago if you're traveling all the time and you're never there to go to dinner in Chicago. Right? And it's the same thing. You got to be able to get on planes. You got to show your commitment. You got to show that you're dedicated to that customer. And you can only do that with time. And you need to have the same people representing your customers or representing you to your customers for years, if not decades.
So true. So let me pick your brain because we're hearing great things in the economy about how unemployment is the lowest it's been
Yeah.
since 2008. However, as a career coach, I also know that the talent wars are back. So it's a buyer's market. There are a lot of incredibly talented people. We have our wonderful millennial generation that is the largest in the employment history, right? The largest number of
Mhm.
people working. So, how do you tell, well, our audience, is it still really tough out there or are jobs more plentiful?
Well, it really depends on the skill set and the geographic location, and that's the thing. The one misnomer to the unemployment rate. People want to talk about what the real unemployment rate is, and what job seekers really care about is what it is where they live.
Yeah, yeah,
Right? And if I live in Chicago and there are plenty of jobs there, that's great. If I live in Wichita, Kansas, and there aren't jobs there, that doesn't help me
it
very
doesn't help
much.
me. Yeah,
No.
exactly
And
right.
so what this generation or this point in American history is missing is we don't get a lot of people relocating for the opportunity of
Yeah,
jobs.
yeah.
And that's what technologies, it's created this conflict of we can work anywhere and do anything and have access to everything. But to actually go in and do work, you kind of need to be near where the headquarters are, where the branches are. And if it doesn't exist where you are, you've got to go find it. And I believe I'm very bullish on the market. I think that there are great jobs in a lot of different cities around the country, but there's also a skills gap of where a lot of people want. Sales is always a big plus, and
Hmm.
operational, accounting and finance, but technology and programmers and developers. I had somebody come to me the other day, Caroline, and they said, you know what? My brain doesn't work right. I didn't go to Stanford or Georgia Tech or MIT to be a developer or a coder. I didn't play with computers when I was a kid. And to think that everybody who's a developer either had an innate ability when they were a kid or went to the best schools in the country is like saying every doctor graduated from Harvard
Right,
Medical School.
right. It's a
Right?
misnomer. Yeah.
There are good people and good jobs, and every company can't afford to hire the best developers from the best schools. The key is, are you giving yourself, your kids, whomever, the information they need on what they need to go out and do in order to be
Hmm.
successful and find the jobs?
Hmm. So, are you working with a lot of people in transition who may have been underemployed since, the Great Recession, and now they're trying to get back in the game and get back to that level where they really want to thrive in a
We
leadership
don't
role?
we don't have a lot of people that we help that much in transition
Okay.
from one career to the next from the standpoint of companies pay us, and when they pay us, they want a certain skill set.
Yeah.
So if
Yeah.
it's not somebody right out of college that they can mold and is raw, we have a little bit of a challenge in pitching that. However, in career transition, there are so many groups and community colleges and things like that for people that are trying to figure out the next phase. However, the flip side of it is if you're in a career transition is to do temporary work and sometimes to do things. People, when they're unemployed for a long period of time, they think they need to go to Starbucks and be a barista or Home Depot and work retail. But there's a lot of office jobs you could take for similar money where you can get exposure to what careers you may be interested in long haul. And it may not be being paid what you want, but neither is being a barista.
I agree. I agree. So you have an incredible culture of engagement at LaSalle. Tell me more about why that engagement is essential for successful companies and the unique engagement tools that you, Tom, have created.
Well, the number one thing, and I share this with everybody I talk to, Caroline, my staff, as well as when I do speaking or things like we're doing today, conversations, is my environment is only a good place for the people that like it,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
It's got to be the
And I
good
think,
fit. Yeah.
yeah, and I think a lot of people see, oh, this company's the best place to work. I want to work there. Well, guess what? If you don't like that environment, it's not a good place for you.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing. Some people like big colleges. Some people like small colleges.
Hmm.
Doesn't mean that one's better or worse. It means it's right for the person that's going into that learning environment. And for me, my belief is people need to be appreciated. People need to have thoughts and visions communicated, and they need to make sure that when there's issues, it's being addressed. And then, most importantly, they need to be held accountable. They need to know these are what the expectations are of management, and then to find out what are the employees' expectations. And then once you've got those things lined up, then, I did a presentation a couple months ago or a couple weeks ago, and I said to the folks, I said, the key isn't holding people accountable. The key is being accountable to holding people accountable.
Ah, yeah, which is different.
Right? Absolutely. You can't have a vice president say to a director, I'm holding you accountable to getting it done, and then not hold them accountable to being accountable.
Right.
And I'm not trying to be verbose. I'm just trying to, there's so many steps of holding people accountable. You don't, as parents, you don't say to your kid, I expect you to get all A's, and then never ask them if they've done their homework.
Exactly right. Got to follow up.
Right?
And you also have to walk the walk as a leader and be an example.
Absolutely. And what we've got now is a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of CEOs. They've built companies and they view them more as lifestyle machines than organizations to grow. So you've got people that are busy doing the lifestyle stuff and having fun and doing cool things, but they're not in the business with the staff. And I get asked about the millennials all the time. I have the hardest working group of people in the world, and 80% of them are millennials. But what they want is to know that their management and their leadership team is working side by side them.
And you do some very cool things. Can you share some of those very cool specific LaSalle things that you do to earn those engagement ratings?
The first day people start, we have a huge sign on the front door of any office they're working in, and we have 100 balloons blown up, 50 in the lobby, 50 at their desk. We have streamers. We welcome them to the office.
That's
then
cool.
On the anniversary of their hire date, we have what we call a rebirth day, meaning your career is born here, so it's a birthday, a rebirth day, and we celebrate that, and people get gifts from management, from ownership, as well as from their coworkers and teammates. We have a party in the afternoon to acknowledge it and celebrate it. So we do things like that to say, my favorite expression is, all you have to do is wake up breathing to have a birthday. To have a rebirth day, you've actually had to contribute something to a bunch of other people.
Yes.
So those are a couple little tidbits of what we do to make people feel engaged and appreciated.
It's great. I love that. Great example. So let's talk about the millennials, because they're a very important part of our workforce, and your group is made up of 80% of millennials. And for our audience, it's important to know that in 2020, the millennials will be half the workforce. So it is a very impactful generation, and frankly, the succession plan to leadership roles. So how do we navigate a workforce with millennials?
Well, I think that's the big misnomer, right? Is we sit there and we gawk at Facebook, which Mark Zuckerberg's not really a millennial anymore, but we look at the companies that we're in awe of that have been started by 20-somethings. Mm-hmm. Right? And then we complain that they don't want to work. We don't. A lot of people complain that they don't want to work hard or they can't be managed. Yet this whole generation of super valued companies, and if there is a tech bubble, and I personally don't think there is, but companies that are hyper valued right now in the tech space that were started by 20-somethings or millennials, you can't have it both ways. You can't say that they're a bunch of lazy you-know-whats, and yet there's these few outliers that are doing great things. It's just like any generation. Everybody who was part of the right age for World War II didn't go fight there, right? But it's still called the greatest generation. Stereotypes are stereotypes for a reason, but we've got to look at this and say, millennials, all they want is a connection. Yeah. And so it's fair. I believe this. And so what I find is that we live in this world where 5 people go out for dinner and 5 people are on their mobile phones having different conversations with people outside, right? There's no doubting that there's a lack of connectivity within social circles because people are connected to those who are far away from them. At the same time, they still want to be with those people.
Right.
And that's the same thing people want in the workplace. People want a feeling of connection. They want to belong to something, but they also they also are aware of the BS that exists. Mm-hmm. And they don't want to have the wool pulled over their eyes. They want to know that for an honest day's work, they get an honest day's pay. They know that everything can be verified, from a used car to what a salary should be to what their friends make. And they want to work in a place where there's something that has a little bit of a cool factor to it.
Sure.
And the cool factor could be having dinner with the CEO. The cool factor could be company trips. The cool factor can be having beer in the office. There's a million different things that aren't expensive that it could be the cool factor, but you've got to figure out what you as a leader, entrepreneur, as an employee, what's important to you, and find companies that share that.
See, I think that's great. I'm so excited to hear you talk about this. And I think the millennials are extraordinary. And as I said, they are the succession plan and the transparency that they require, we should have been doing years ago. So it's all good. I think they're also moving the needle in so many ways about how we navigate the workforce. I happen to have a wonderful young team of millennials that I lead, and I learn so much from them every day. There's some great reverse mentoring going on as well.
Oh well, I'll tell you a funny story. I was talking to some guys the other day, people, and they said, the problem with these millennials is they were part of this participation trophy generation where they just got trophies for participating. And I looked at the person and I said, you're the age that had the kids that gave them
Yes,
the
you gave them
trophy.
the trophy. It's
I
not
said,
their fault.
they're not the problem.
I agree.
You are.
Yeah,
I said,
amen,
you
brother. I
didn't
know.
want your life to be hard as a parent, so everyone got a trophy. Now they work for you and you're mad. You're the problem, not the
Yeah.
kid.
Yeah,
So
thank
explain
you.
to the kid what it's about. I'm so sick of that.
I am too, and I'm totally on your team on that because the Generation X or the young boomers gave them the trophies. We can't
Sure,
fault
they're the
them.
problem for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Well said. Well said. Hey, listen, I know you do some really cool surveys at LaSalle, and apparently I haven't read it yet, but I look forward to it. You've got one on dealing with a bad boss, so unpack that one for us.
Yeah, so the expression is people join companies, they quit managers.
Yep, yep.
And and over 60% of the population says that they have worked for a bad boss, right?
Wow,
And
60%.
and and I- and the question is, people need to be held accountable. But when we go into management, companies want to give people raises, and people don't want to stay in a job they're not making more money.
Hmm.
And aside from sales, there are very few jobs that you can make more money continually without moving into management.
Yeah.
So people default and go into management as a way to make more money when either A, they don't have the skills to do it, or B, they don't want to do it.
Yeah.
But they do it for the monetary reasons because they don't want to be stagnant. They want to
They
make
see it as
obviously.
growth. Yeah.
So then what happens is you have people that either A, don't have the skills to do it, or B, don't want to be doing it, and now they're responsible for the development of others,
Yes. Yes.
right? So now you've got people who are unhappy working for these managers who didn't want to be managers in the first place or weren't qualified to be managers, but executives gave them the job because it was the only way to hold on to their skill set,
Hmm.
right? And employers don't contribute enough money to management, training, and development. Either internally or externally, they don't give them the tools. And when you promote your star accountant or your star marketing person or whomever else into a manager, you guess what? You have just hired a new employee.
You have, and you've got to train them and grow them and
Train
empower
them on
them
how
for
to
that
do it.
role.
And companies don't do it. Penny wise and dollar foolish.
So, do you see or do you advise companies about leadership development and training? Is because you've got a very unique vantage point.
My advice to every one of our clients, to anybody I ever talk to about hiring people, is when you hire this person, do you feel they're worth investing 10 to 20% of their salary into training?
Hmm.
I'm not saying you have to, but I'm saying if you're not willing to do that,
Right.
then you've probably hired the wrong person because you don't view them as a long-term player
Right.
that's worthy of training.
Right. Great insight. So, Tom, I understand you have an upcoming book. Whet my appetite about that. Tell me what's
Well,
cooking.
it's probably this podcast is probably a pretty good entree to it. It's really about why, as employees and people who are viewing their 9 to 5 as a job versus a career, why they're part of the problem, not part of the solution, and giving different perspectives on how to look at their situation, what management's looking for in employees, how to view career growth, how to interview for jobs and get them, how to take accountability for your professional life. It's not as much of how to get the job you want type of here's how to change your life. It's
Yeah.
more of saying, guess what? You're not always right.
Well done. And what's the name of the book, or is that still in progress?
Still in progress.
I hear you. Got it. I totally understand. As a fellow author, I know that that will be tweaked up until the day that it's
Yes,
published.
you
So
are correct.
I wish you great success. Tom Gimbel, what a joy to have you on the show, founder and chief executive officer of LaSalle Network, staffing and recruiting. I've learned a lot from you today. I know my listening audience has, and I'd love for you to share the LaSalle website and how we can follow you in the social media sphere.
Absolutely. Our website is lasallnetwork.com, LASALLE network.com. You can follow me at Tom Gimbel on Twitter. And we are just getting rolling with Periscope and some other stuff. So, and we have a Facebook page, LaSalle Network, and all that good stuff. So, and we're obviously on LinkedIn and putting a lot of talent out there. And you can find, I'm now writing a column weekly for inkmagazine.com as well. So,
Good stuff.
they're online portal. So feel free to send your comments.
Sounds great. Tom, thank you so much. I wish you great success. When the book is done, you let me know and we'll talk about it.
I appreciate it, Caroline. Thanks for having me on.
Okay. And I want to thank all of you for tuning in to Your Working Life, where my goal is to help you design your career destiny so it doesn't happen by default. True career and life satisfaction is possible, and it's time to embrace what you love doing so you can do more of it. And our show is now available on iTunes, YouTube, Podbean, and Stitcher. And I would be thrilled if you would leave a comment and tell us what's working so we can work for you. I'm Caroline Dowd-Higgins. Take good care.